All right, welcome Real Estate Hustlers podcast. I'm your host, Josh Appelman, founder and CEO of Appelman Properties. Today we're joined with Jason Williams. Jason is the founder of Ironclad Underwriting Mastery and co-founder of the Academy Presents Blends, 15 years of engineering experience with real estate mastery and single family, went from single family to multifamily. Jason, if you could let the audience know a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my journey into real estate happened, I guess, over 20 years ago when I was getting into single family homes. My family, my parents have owned some rentals, and so that's sort of what jump started me. We bought my wife and I bought our first home in 2023. We knew we were going to rent it out. We still have it to this day. It's cash flowing. We've refinanced it numerous times so we can get into other properties. But in 2017, um, our eyes were open to multifamily apartments, syndications, so we can use other people's money to buy properties. And really, since then, the rest is history. We now have a few syndications under our belt. We have a couple properties. The furthest one's like 15 minutes from me, locally, and then we have some like scattered throughout Texas and stuff. So I'm in North Texas, so that's where I invest is in Texas. So.
Yep, that's smart. That way, you know your backyard. You know the good streets versus the not so good streets. We'll say. Um, that's a
Yeah.
great story and you've got experience and kind of and then propelling into multifamily. Now you've got economies of scale. Um, how many units do you all currently have under your management?
Um, I think we're around 200 or so units, scattered throughout Texas. We got 175 or so here where I live in Wichita Falls, and then the rest are in like Tyler and Waco and Lubbock areas,
Got it.
Gatesville. So
Are you all are managing those third? You are the property management company, asset management.
asset management, property management, no, I hire
Got
that
it.
out. I don't want to be getting calls at 2 a.m. because toilets go out
Yeah.
or bad things happen. Just let me know when the big things happen and you just need approval on that. That's my involvement.
Yeah, that's definitely that's I think that's the overall like wish. And then we did do third party management, but scattered sites on what we have, we had to ultimately take over the management on our own and just have more control of the construction, the expense management, so on and so forth. Just makes it's easier with bigger, larger properties for sure. Um,
We have investigated doing property management, bringing that in house. We would bring on an expert to do that, though. I'm
mhm.
not going to do that. And we are right there at the cusp of like how many units do we need before it's beneficial? Because yeah, if you can bring management in house, it saves on expenses so
Yeah.
much because I mean it's all in house and you are monitoring everything then versus trying to manage a manager. So
Yeah, and you're able to blend expenses, so you're not essentially propping up another company with the help of your properties, and that ultimately influxes expenses on its own. So you can have one side of your company that helps manage another side and blend those people together, and it works out. But let's
yep,
get into to underwriting because that's really where it all starts, deal or no deal. Um,
yep.
and to find out what a deal is, you have to learn the basics. So tell us how that journey started with you, and then how you became more fluent with underwriting and eventually an expert.
Yes. So my background is I have a PhD in chemical engineering. I've been an R&D engineer in industry for 15 plus years. Um, my background as an R&D engineer is I was always creating systems so that people can use my spreadsheets or models and with minimal input get the results they need. So I had to be able to convey information from our lab techs and get information to our salesmen so they could sell our products. And so I was sort of like the middleman who tied all those strings together. And so what I did with real estate is I brought that aspect into it. So I created my model based off of minimal inputs needed. And if you don't know them, there's some default things you can use. But really, I try to like minimize our input so I can automatically import a rent roll in a T12 into my spreadsheet and it fill out almost everything for me right off the bat. And then I can go and fine tune maybe some like the construction or the CapEx budget. I can fine tune the lending information so that we can at least start to see from a big picture if this deal is going to start making sense or not. And then from there, then we can go and fine tune everything. So that's how I created my system. And when I first started out, so I started this in 2017 when we first learned about multifamily. I was like, well, it's like, I'm a numbers guy. I want to know how to run the numbers. I knew nothing about it. I have a mentor who has like almost 3 billion in assets under management. So I was working with him and I have some other coaches as well. So I'm gathering all these resources and I'm compiling them all into my specific model. And so that I like get all the good parts that I like and get all the bad parts out and make it a really robust model. So now my model, I can handle so many different asset classes now. I can do like self storage, RV parks, mobile home communities, retail, triple net, mixed use, retail, and multifamily. So I created all these models so that I can run the numbers. And then I was at a conference a couple years ago, and people were like, "Hey, can I buy your model?" Or "Hey, can you show me how to run your model?" And I was like, I never even thought about that before. I was just doing it for my own personal gain. And then from there, it's like people were wanting me to teach them. And so that's what the Ironclad Underwriting Mastery started out as, is like, yeah, I'll help you teach. Here, I'll create a course and I'll walk you through everything that I do so that you can learn. And then and the cool thing is every time I have a student, I'm learning from them as much as they're learning from me. So my course is constantly evolving because everybody has different needs, everybody's in a different market and all the markets are different. So I was able to create a system and a course based off of all of that. So
Got it. Very cool. So you've got kind of an all-in-one monster model made up, underwrite anything and everything, different tabs.
definitely different tabs. My main I have different models, but they're all based on the same like engine.
Okay.
Like all the background stuff is all the same. I created my own macros, so everything's running in the back. So and I'm actually in the process of making a web-based version because right now everything has to run on Excel
Yeah.
because of the macros. I can't run it on Google Sheets. You can't run it on like the web-based version of Excel. It all has to be on like a desktop version of Excel to be able to run, and that really limits what can happen. And then if it breaks, and I tend to break Excel a lot, yeah, that's why I'm creating the web-based version right now.
Yeah, I've used some really big models, and if you break it, it is so hard to find where the break, or if you enter even put a number in a cell that you shouldn't, then it's can be very cumbersome. Um, cool. So when you're underwriting a deal, what would be like the most critical metrics that you find when you're evaluating a deal?
So when I first start off, I'll import my T12 in a rent roll. I will go through the T12 and I run it through my own analysis so I can see what the expenses look like and income looks like on a monthly basis. I get my trends before I even input it into the model. That way I can see what the property is doing, how the last 12 months, how it's been performing, and how that will affect my business plan. Because if I see like the property has like been really dismal the first half of the year, but then it start picking up, I can start seeing what the seller was doing. It's like, did they like bring everything down and start renovating everything and then slowly lease it back up? Is that why this so dismal the first half of the year? Or was it a bad property management? So it raises all these questions I have on the current state of the property, and that's just from the T12. And again, what if it's stellar the first half of the year, and the last 3 months it's just like tanked. What happened then? I mean, so there's a lot of things you can look at and start getting questions, or at least raising questions about what's going on, so that you know what to ask the broker or the seller. Is like, well, why is it doing this? Or what was your thought process when you were doing this? That way you can incorporate all of that into your current business plan and move forward, or walk away. So
Yeah, got it. I like seeing high expense ratios. So if you've got like a 65 or 70% expense ratio, I know we can knock that down to 45. And then I know that we've got an operational value add. And then you go in and you say, all right, how much can we raise the rents? What's that? What does that look like? And then you've got a most you've got the double. You've got operation and efficiency, and then bring it to market rents. And then ultimately that affects the NOI. But what have you, when you're underwriting, like what is like the key factors when you're underwriting that is like, all right, this is a deal or this is no deal?
so I look at what the rent increase is from what I think it could be versus what it is. And this is I think I analyze other people's deals more than I analyze my own, because I mean I do analyze my own as they come across, but when I'm only investing in my backyard, they're fewer and far between. But I also help people with their underwriting as a consulting and as a coach. So I see things, and what I see is like, all right, the broker says they can increase rents $150 per unit per month or whatever on average. I will go in and I'll look and I'll see, why can they, or why do they believe that, and is that believable? This morning I was looking at one, where I could potentially be a partner on, and they were wanting to increase the rents 350, 450, something like that, and they were only planning on doing $4,000 per unit in the upgrade. It's like that's not going to happen right there. So that, I mean, that's one thing that I look at as like, all right, what would it take to get to that $150 premium? Does it require 7,500 per unit to get there? Is it just below market and it's just totally mismanaged? And so I start backpedaling to see, all right, this is where they think they can go. How do we get there? So that's where I look at. So
Got it. Yeah, and that's one way of looking at it. Increase through renovations. We do that on every property as well. And yeah, you're right. $4,000 per unit is not. I mean, that's lipstick. That's cosmetic. Very light cosmetic. But something that's increasing. A property that's increasing 300, 350. Your almost original vintage. You need cabinet refacing, flooring, baseboard a lot of the times. Of course, new paint, fixtures, hardware, plumbing,
yeah, you're
blinds.
changing the asset class then, like from a B to a C, or even a C to an A or something like that. You're jumping when you're increasing that much, and to go from say a C to even a B plus, you're putting in at least 10,000 per unit, and maybe even up to 15.
Yeah.
And that's in my market. I mean, every market's different because of labor and construction costs, and so
Yeah, no, we're out of Cincinnati, so that's right there. I mean, you're just because the material labor, and then you've got management fees and project management fees, of course, that are on top of everything. So but it can become a lot in order to get to the 350 mark. I mean, and it takes time. We found projects like that. It's 2 years no matter what. It takes 2 years to get to our performa numbers. You're going to release it, but you're not getting your performa leases on the first go around. You're going to lease it, and then those people will go away, and then usually your second lease is where you get your performa numbers, and then you've got your new leases. They have to deal with the construction, and then still deal with the bad actors, so on and so forth. But it's a process, and it takes time, and it's patience.
yep.
Um, when you are estimating, like what are some websites that you use? What are some resources that you'll look for rents, for market rate rents, for taxes, underwriting, tax increases, so on and so forth?
So taxes, I go to the county. I look at the property. I look at, they usually have say 10-year or 5 to 10-year history. And so I'll look at that. And being in Texas, we're a non-disclosure state, meaning we don't have to declare to anybody how much we pay for a property. And so with taxes here, they kind of just like guess on what it's worth. And so what we get here is you might buy a property for 10 million. They assessed it at 3 million or whatever. And then they say, oh, it changed hands this year. So we're going to say, well, they probably bought it for 6 million. So it's worth 6 million. So what happens is they just doubled your taxes. It's still less than what you paid. So you don't really have much to contest on. That's why you have to hire advisors. But are you prepared for a double in your taxes? I mean, if you budget for it and you underwrite to it and it works, then go for it. But if you are saying, well, I assume a 10% increase in taxes, you're going to be hosed and out the door. So that's one
Are they
thing that
able to look up like mortgage records or new debt on the property?
only if the bank releases it. And in Texas, they don't have to. Um, I got a letter in the mail on the last property we bought. It says, hey, it looks like you have a $4 million mortgage on this property. So we think this property is worth $5 million or whatever. I didn't respond to it. They always put them in formal letters like, yeah, you please respond, blah, blah, blah. It's like with those in Texas, you just throw them away. With other states, I think you have to turn them in. So I threw it away. I told my lawyers and my CPAs like, hey, I just got this, and my lender too. It's like I'm planning on throwing it away, and they're like, okay. And then for like the tax value, they said it was worth like 3.6 or whatever. So they didn't even go to the full amount they said they were going to go to.
Yeah, we have a say well in Ohio, Cincinnati, the school board gets, of course, money from property taxes. So the school board hires a law firm to go around and dig up and find any new transactions, transfers of ownership. So then we got a letter from this law firm, basically saying here's what your taxes should increase to, and then they take it to the county, and we got it dropped, but we had to still spend money on a lawyer. But
Yeah.
it's just incredible the lengths that some of these municipalities will go to just get property taxes increased, and then it makes it undesirable for us to reinvest into certain areas.
Yeah. Yeah. The school districts here take like half of the all property taxes. So if you pay and just say 5,000 a year in taxes, and this would be like for a single family home, 2,500 of it's going to the school district. So
Yeah. Yep. No, totally. What about utilities? How do you underwrite like utility expenses and reimbursements when you're doing your underwriting?
so I have set up my model so I can do rubs or I can do just straight utilities. I can do like suppose you charge a utility fee, which in Texas you can charge a fee so long as that fee is less than the actual equal to or less than the actual utility. So if say gas is 100, you can charge a fee up to $100. Um, but if it's like 60 and you charge 100, then that's where you can get into trouble. Um, so I have my model set up for that. And I work with utility, I guess I don't know if they're brokers or it's a guy I work with who works on setting up contracts for me for my utilities so that I can at least know what I'm going to be getting into, say, for the next 2 or 3 years. So that's how I do it. For like all bills paid, I mean, I might assume like a certain amount increase per year. And if it's all bills paid, you're not going to be getting anything back from a resident. If it's rubs, again, I have my rubs built in so that we're estimating what the rubs would be based on the utility or the increase of the utility each year. So,
Got it. Okay. Um, what about demand? How do you underwrite and manage like just absorption in the market and demand to make sure that you're going to stay at least above 90%, or I guess have a hedge against vacancies?
so one that there's a big assumption that says, all right, if I follow my rent increase plan, I'm gonna be able to be good. Lately, I have a property that actually went the other way. It's like we're trying to it, and then we were having to start decreasing that so that we can get occupancy up because people were leaving for whatever reason. And so that one, when I do it, I defer to my proper the person who's going to be managing the property. They're going to be like the on-site people. They're the ones who have the history in that market. So I defer a lot to them because they'll be the ones running it. So I
Okay.
always verify everything with a third party. So it's like with like a utility contractor or with third party management or my tax advisors. I always use their judgment for my numbers. So I don't come up with the numbers on my own. So
Okay, got it. Okay, so just as far as like financial returns, when you're underwriting, are there specific marks that you want to hit, like cash on cash, IRR, XIRR? Are you underwriting for XIRR, or is it um, like what kind? How deep do you go?
so I have some metrics I use that I know my investors like. Um, But honestly, every investor invests for different reasons. I've had investors invest in my deals. They knew it wasn't going to cash flow, but they needed depreciation right off the bat, and so they needed the cost seg analysis on it, so they invested for that purpose. I have others who want to invest for cash flow, and on some heavy value ads where it takes, like you said, 2 years to get up to your pro forma. I mean, you might not be cash flowing like you thought you would be right off the bat. And so those investors are like, they want the cash on cash. And if you don't have it or you can't produce it, then they get upset. And so I have to let them know it's like, hey, this is for somebody who wants more money on the back end. They're willing to put their money in for different, like for 5 years, but they're going to double it. So, I mean, like I said, I have metrics that I try to hit, but they're not like steadfast. So I have to reach out to the investors for that specific metric.
Okay, got it.
IRR, people see IRR and like, oh, bigger IRR, that's good. And I want at least 16%, but nobody really knows what that means. And you can get 16% IRR with a really good cash flowing property, but you're not going to have any back end. Or you can get a 16% IRR property with no cash flow and a huge back end. So I mean, that's IRR, I think, is just a magic number people believe in that doesn't really mean anything. But I mean, we still calculate it because people want to see it.
Yeah, and it's not even measured until you actually sell or refinance the property and get your principal back. So it's but that's where you underwrite for multiple exit strategies: refinancing year two, selling year five,
Yeah.
or have your capital event, just sell the whole thing in 5 years. Like, how long does it take to get the cash back, your principal, um, before it just times money's worth more today than it is tomorrow. So the faster you get it back, the better the return.
Yeah.
But it's just different ways of underwriting and making the deal essentially just work. For the listeners, for the beginning real estate investors that are wanting to learn how to underwrite, how to find a deal or no deal, what are red flags that you would look at or look for or even undercover if you've just received financials from a broker or from a property owner? What are some red flags?
So one red flag would be trusting and not verifying. So a broker, they're trying to sell a property. They'll put lipstick on a pig so that they get it sold. They really don't care what happens after they sell it, so long as they get their commission. Same with a seller. Once a seller sells for whatever they want, they're going to walk away. It's not like they're offering a warranty or guarantee or anything. So, I mean, once you buy it, it's yours. And if you are only trusting the numbers that the seller gives and not double checking, like I said, I use third party verification on a lot of my numbers. If you're not doing that, then you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, some
Um,
some red flags that we've seen that I've uncovered. Well, just you kind of learned the property, learned the books, learned. But when you see the financials coming over called sell set, now you know you've got two sets of financials you're dealing with. when they will send over accrual but not cash basis financials. That's a red flag. Typically, your system should produce cash and accrual when you're posting anything. We've seen things that are missing, line items that are missing. Say there's no maintenance on the property, so we know that's. And then we'll go ahead and we'll plug in industry, what we know to be an industry normal number for each unit. But there's things that are missing. An expense ratio that's in the 30s. We know that's almost impossible unless it's brand new, Class A, where you'll have a lower expense ratio. But a C class, B class, you should be between 40 and 50. Those are red flags, but underwrite to what the industry standards are, and then you get in there and you find out the good and the bad, and make it happen.
Yeah, and if you're an all bills paid, your expense ratio might be up 65 or so. So
that would be a terrible situation to be in an all bills paid ownership, owning a complex that is all bills paid. 'Cause that just equals total abuse.
So I have a few properties that are all bills paid, and we tried to implement RUBS, but the people, they're actually pretty decent. They don't abuse it. They would rather pay a premium rent than pay for their own utility. So they have like a constant rent per month that they just write a check for, say, 1,100 versus 800 plus gas plus electric plus water and everything. So that's what market I'm in, and we pushed for RUBS and what have you, but it works out this way for us. So
yeah, we've got
on
one
one
of
our
our
properties.
legacy properties. It was what, like when we're starting out our portfolio, it's just a 4 units small. We've had it for years, but nothing separated. Everything's it's 4 units, master metered on electric, on water, and just total abuse. I'm pretty sure that they invite the neighbors over to take showers just to run the water. But it's just a horror story every month, seeing the utilities that come through, and it's just I think it's a human nature. You don't care that the light's left on if you're not paying for it. I mean,
Yeah, I knew a guy in college. He lived in an all bills paid place, and he would literally have his AC set on like the low setting. He would have his oven on and open. He would just boil water. He would leave the water running, and I asked him why is he doing it. He's like, because it's free, so he's
yeah.
just doing it.
See, you've got some good stories too.
I haven't seen that in any residence, but I have seen that like from like the tenant perspective, and I would hate to have had that guy as a resident. But
Before we wrap up here, what would be some learning lessons that you wish you knew now, but you wish you knew then, or that you know now but you wish you knew then?
so I'm constantly evolving my model to handle like different lending parameters. Let's see, different being able to increase certain expenses by a certain amount. So like I said, I'm in Texas. Insurance and taxes are going through the roof. So now my model can handle, say, a 20% increase in taxes, but for everything else, it's like a 5% increase. So I mean, you could see the evolution of my model from when I first started out to now. So you can sort of see what I wish I knew back then versus now, just from the evolution of it. Um, yeah, just being able to handle the expenses versus just like hand waving and thinking everything's going to be okay from the beginning. Um, Also, I think as an asset manager, you do get to hire and fire property managers. Don't let them push you around because they work for you, unless you are the company, in which in case they still work for you. But you have more control than you think you do, and people are not going to let you believe that. I think they're gonna try and run all over you, and if you don't push back, they'll you're just asking for disaster.
Yep, and they will push until they can't push anymore. That's a good piece of advice for sure. Cool. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, learn more about underwriting and pick your brain, how can they reach out?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I just created a new master class. It's on my website. It's ironcladunderwriting.com/masterclass. which I go into even more red flags on what I look for whenever I'm underwriting. And then from there, you can look me up through, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I have Instagram. I have a YouTube channel where you can learn more. Um, every Thursday, I hold office hours with my students where we can go over live deals and go over any questions you have or anything like that. So yeah, you can look me up through any of those. And but the main thing, if you go to ironcladunderwriting.com, that has links to everything that I
Okay.
do. So
Got it. Very, very cool. Definitely appreciate the insights and look forward to following.